Hello, guys. Today we bring you 21 facts that will absolutely blow your mind. We unintentionally believe what we want to believe. Humans are victim to something called confirmation bias, which is the tendency to interpret facts in a way that confirms what we already believe. So no matter how many facts you throw at your grandfather trying to sway his political opinions, there's a good chance he isn't going to change his opinions. It's one of the psychology facts you just have to accept that you can't change. It is sad, but it is also the reality. We're convinced that the future is bright. Doesn't matter if you like where you're at right now or not, because most of us have an optimism bias that convinces us the future will be better than the present, according to research in current biology. We assume we'll rise up in our careers, never get divorced, raise little angels of children, and live to a ripe old age. Those might not all be realistic for everyone, but there's no harm in dreaming. We are not as good at multitasking as we think we are. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology shows that even when you think you're doing two things at once, what you're actually doing is switching quickly between the two tasks. You're still focusing on one at a time. No wonder it's so hard to listen to your partner while scrolling through Instagram. We automatically second-guess ourselves when other people disagree with us. In a famous experiment in the 1950s, college students were asked to point out which of three lines was the same length as a fourth. When they heard others who were also in on the experiment chose an answer that was different from them, the participants followed their lead and gave that answer, and ended up giving wrong answers, even though initially they had the right answers in their mind. Some people enjoy seeing anger in others. In one study in the University of Michigan, people with high testosterone remembered information better when it was paired with an angry face than a normal face, indicating they found the angry glare rewarding. The researchers said it could mean that certain people enjoy making someone else glare at them, as long as a flash of anger doesn't last long enough to be a threat, which could be why some people love teasing someone to the point that person attacks him or her. Our brains try to make boring speeches more interesting. Researchers in University of Glasgow found that in the same way we hear voices in our heads when we read aloud, our brain also talk over boring speeches. If someone is speaking monotonously, we'll subconsciously make it more vivid in our heads. There's a reason we want to squeeze cute things. Cuteness aggression is a real thing, and people who feel it don't really want to crush that adorable puppy. Research published in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience found that when we're feeling overwhelmed by positive emotions like we do when looking at an impossibly cute baby dog, a little bit of aggression helps us balance out that high. So, it is perfectly normal to feel that way. We always try to return a favor. It's not just about good manners, but it is also the rule of reciprocity, which suggests that we're programmed to want to help someone who's helped us. It probably developed because, to keep society working smoothly, people need to help each other out. Stores, and some frenemies, like to use this against you, offering freebies in hopes that you'll spend some cash. Food tastes better when someone else makes it. Ever wonder why that burger from the takeout place down the road tastes better than the ones you make at home, even if you use the same ingredients? One study published in the journal Science found that when you make yourself a meal, you're around it so long that it feels less exciting by the time you actually eat it, and that, eventually, decreases your enjoyment. However, I'm actually a huge advocate of cooking at home. What do you guys prefer? Home-cooked meals or eating from outside? Comment down below and let me know your answers. Beginnings and ends are easier to remember than middles. Our brains have something called a negativity bias that makes us remember bad news more than good news, which is also why you quickly forget that your friend complimenting your hair, but keep dwelling on the fact that a kid at the bus stop insulted your jacket. To feel balanced, we need at least a 5-to-1 ration of good to bad in our lives. We care more about a single person than about massive tragedies. In a study at University of Pennsylvania, one group learned about a little girl who was starving to death, another group learned about millions of people dying of hunger, and a third learned about both situations. People donated more than twice as much money when hearing about the little girl than when hearing the statistics, and even a group who'd heard her story in the context of a bigger tragedy donated less. Psychologists think that we're wired to help the person in front of us, but when the problem feels too big, we figure a little part isn't doing much. Catching a yawn could help us bond. Why do you yawn when someone else does, even if you don't feel sleep? There are a few theories about why yawning is contagious, but one of the leading ones is that it shows empathy. People who are less likely to show empathy, such as toddlers who haven't learned it yet, or young people with autism, are less likely to yawn in reaction to someone else's. Makes sense why a party almost all the time ends with just one person yawning. Fear can be good if we're not really in any sort of danger. Not everyone loves scary movies, but for the ones who does, there are a few theories as to why, the main theory coming down to hormones. When you're watching a scary movie or walking through a haunted house, you get all the adrenaline, endorphins, and dopamine from a fight or flight response, but no matter how scared you feel, your brain recognizes that you're not really in any sort of danger, so you get that natural high without the risk. Probably the safest way to get high, if we have a plan B, our plan A is less likely to succeed. Every now and then, it hurts to be prepared. In a series of experiments from the University of Pennsylvania, researchers found that when volunteers thought about a backup plan before starting a task, they did worse than those who hadn't thought about a plan B. What's more, when they realized they had two options, their motivation for succeeding in the first option dropped. The researchers stress that thinking ahead is a good idea, but you might be more successful if you keep those plans vague. So, never have a plan B. More human twins are being born now than ever before. According to a new study in the journal Human Reproduction, the twinning rate has increased by 1/3 since the 80s, up from 9 to 12 twins per 1,000 deliveries. Currently that adds up to about 1.6 million twins born each year across the world, which means 1 out of every 42 babies is a twin. Helping drive this is the increasing use of medically assisted reproduction and the delay in childbearing. Twinning has also been found to increase with a mother's age. The first person convicted of speeding was going 8 miles per hour. According to Guinness World Records, the first person to be charged with speeding was Walter Arnold from the English village of Paddockwood, Kent. On Jan. 28, 1896, Arnold was spotted going 4 times the speed limit in his 19th century Benz, but the speed limit at the time was just 2 miles per hour. That meant he was not going too fast by today's standards. The constable had to chase him down on his bicycle. The world wastes about 1 billion metric tons of food each year. About 931 million metric tons of food is wasted every year. That's how much food that researchers with the United Nations estimate was wasted in 2019, according to the Food Waste Index Report 2021, which surveyed 54 countries, finding that the majority of wasted food, 61%, comes from homes, while restaurants and other food services produce 26% of wasted food. Grocery stores make up just 13% of food waste. On a more serious note, it is high time we stop wasting food and call people out when you see them wasting food. The severed head of a sea slug can grow a whole new body. It sounds like something out of a horror film, but it is actually very real. The Elysiocef marginata, a type of sea slug, has been found to not only survive decapitation, but to be able to grow a whole new body from it. Ecologists at Nara Women's University in Japan found that, a few hours after having their heads severed from their bodies, the snails' heads were already nibbling on algae, as if nothing had happened. In about 20 days, 1/3 of the sea slugs studied had fully grown back, their bodies, heart included. The world's smallest reptile was first reported in 2021. Those who think everything on the planet has already been discovered might just not be looking close enough. A tiny chameleon was discovered in northern Madagascar, which was measuring just 28.9 millimeters, is believed to be the smallest reptile on Earth. The itty-bitty chameleon was recently discovered and reported in the January 2021 issue of Scientific Reports. But there's one thing about these critters that's big for its size, which is the genitalia of the males measures almost 20% of its body length. Some sea snakes can breathe through their skin. You might think that it's just fish that have gills, but there are several species of sea snake that breathe through their skin as well. For example, the Hygrophis cyanocinctus has been found to breathe through the top of its own head. It has a small hole and collection of blood vessels at the top of its head for picking up oxygen from the seawater and sending it to the reptile's brain while it moves underwater.